Hello, class. This is the podcast for team number two, and we will be discussing the novel Beloved by Morrison. My name is, first off, we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Jose Vicente Ramirez, and here's the rest of the panel for my podcast.
Hi, I'm Jose Martinez.
Hi, my name is Isabella.
And then, hi, my name is Juan Pacheco. And to start off, we're going to go over a summary of Beloved. Beloved by Toni Morrison is a powerful novel set after American Civil War, focusing on the haunting legacy of slavery. It tells the story of Seth, an escaped enslaved woman living in Cincinnati, Ohio, with her daughter, Denver. The two are haunted by the spirit of Seth's deceased daughter, who died as a baby. The novel begins when a strange young woman appears at their home, calling herself Beloved. Seth believes this is the spirit of her dead daughter returned to life, and the family becomes entangled with Beloved, who exerts a mysterious and powerful influence over them. The narrative moves back and forth in time, revealing Seth's traumatic past. As a slave on the Sweet Home plantation, she endured unspeakable horrors after escaping. Seth chose to kill her own daughter rather than to let her be captured and returned to slavery, an act that has haunted her ever since. As the story progresses, Seth confronts the impact of her past decisions, the weight of her trauma, and the complexity of motherhood while trying to rebuild a sense and community. Through the characters of Beloved, Morrison explores themes of memory, guilt, identity, and struggle for freedom in the aftermath of slavery. So Seth was a slave who lived in Ohio, and then she was trying to escape with her daughter. When trying to escape, they did end up being caught, which led Seth to making the choice of killing her daughter. Her reason why she killed her daughter was she believed like she was saving her from slavery. It's thoughtful but also selfless because she did just take her own daughter's life. Her daughter had no choice but to die in the hands of her own mother. In my opinion, I believe that Seth was trying to do the right thing from her point of view. As for the part of killing her daughter, it was extreme, and there was definitely better choices on handling being caught as a runaway slave. Seth should have allowed her daughter to be a slave for a couple years and decide if she wanted to commit suicide or not after experiencing slavery. Now it makes sense why Seth is so impacted by the appearance of the character who was introduced as Beloved. Supposedly, the lady who was introduced was possessed by Seth's late daughter. With all this past trauma of slavery and losing her daughter, it leads to her suffering mentally.
I think really something that might be a little bit important to talk about. It's the psychological and emotional symbolism on the story. The ghost represents the unresolved emotional weight of slavery. The well said as the main character carries like this guilt over a traumatic choice that she had to make between um knowing that like for the rest of her life her kid was gonna be a slave over like just finishing or like preventing her from like suffering by like ending her life. Um, she did this to protect her child, but to what cost? Um, and then this also um, you know the and then like after I mean and go back to you guys.
Yeah, so I actually agree with Juan. I think that Sid should have let her daughter leave. I understand the fact that she was a slave and she didn't want her daughter to go through the same thing, but I also believe that she should have let her daughter leave because she could not known that slavery was gonna end, but you know, if she would have had left her daughter to live, she would have had a chance. But unfortunately, she didn't. And I think that her acts caused her trauma and made her see Beloved as her dead daughter. Sid's traumatic experience of slavery is also part of why she killed her own daughter to save her from the life of bondage. And this leaves deep psychological scars, and the trauma distorts her memory and sense of reality because of Beloved's sudden appearance could be interpreted as a psychological manifestation of Sid's guilt and grief. Beloved could be seen as a ghost or a real woman, but Sid's need to believe she is her daughter stems from her desire for redemption and reconciliation. This is why Sid becomes obsessed with Beloved, trying to make up for her past mistakes, which was killing her own daughter. This obsession shows that her trauma hasn't healed and instead it's been reanimated in Beloved. Her perception is driven more by emotion and memory than by logic, but in the end, Sid's treatment of Beloved as her daughter reflects her need to confront and make peace with her past. Now on to my my next panelist, Jose.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a very difficult book to understand, especially with like all the different nuances they can be to the character. So I think to help us better connect with the character, it's important to go back to some of our previous learnings. More specifically, I'd like to bring up Cohen and his seven theses of monster culture. Um, Specifically in thesis one, we learned that the monster is a cultural body. And as we learn throughout this story or throughout the novel Beloved, she is a ghost made flesh and is kind of a manifestation of the trauma of slavery and personal grief. Her body carries the weight of immense historical and cultural pain, with the collective memory of of all those who suffered through oppression during these times in our history. Um, and with the collective memory of, well, and she was classified as a cultural monster because this is what was happening during our history all over, and we were dehumanizing these people because of the color of their skin and no other reason. Um, and then to move on to the second thesis, thesis number two, which is that the monster always escapes. This, as there is no specific monster to actually escape in this scenario, the monster that is escaping would be kind of her trying to run away from her trauma, and her trauma always coming back to haunt her. She went through a lot while in captivity, um, and with Beloved taking on this personification of her trauma, fear, guilt, and representing itself in her subconscious as this monster. Um, the idea remains the same that Seath is trying to escape her past, obviously, and forget everything she went through, but the trauma keeps manifesting itself in the form of Beloved and will always come back, never be buried. And we learned through this to apply it even further, beyond just this story, that the horrors of slavery, of what was happening during our culture, and everything that she went through linger, they resurface, and they will haunt people for generations and haunt families for generations. If anyone else has anything to add to that.
I wanted to add that Toni Morris did something revolutionary by giving her voice to an emotional, spiritual, and psychological weight of slavery. Um, Not just the dates and the facts, but the inner lives of the people who lived through it. Also, the pain, the silence, the love, and the loss she did through the main character, Steph, a black woman who's deeply flawed, deeply human, and unforgettable. I also wanted to talk about how this book won a Pulitzer Prize in 1988, which later led Morrison, which is the writer, to receive a Nobel Prize in Literature. Thank you.
That was our podcast. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.